It's the time of watching and waiting for the child to come, and we have exclusive footage. Ben, would you put up a slide for us? Daniel, stand up. This is Lewis Blackburn, 8 pounds, 8 ounces. And you're getting some sleep, I understand, which is great. It's great. What a beautiful child, what a blessing. Before Mary set out, the angel Gabriel visits her and tells her the news that she will bear a child. Angels appear with good advice. Gabriel says, "Do not be afraid or fear not." That tends to be what angels say when you first run across them, depending on the translation. He sings the Annunciation. Mary hears the song and arises and begins the journey to Bethlehem to visit Elizabeth, where she sings as well of an event that will finally bring her to hear the angels singing Gloria in Excelsis Deo. And of course, the angels we will be hearing singing will be at our choir concert tonight at 7 o'clock. Zechariah sings when John is born. In this whole part of this particular Gospel of Luke, people come forward and they just open up and they sing. And oh, that angels should sing the Gloria and fear not to us today. Luke prefaces the birth story of Jesus, a narrative whereby a young girl named Mary broke out in song. We know it as the Magnificat. She sings, "My soul magnifies the Lord, my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things in me, and holy is his name." And Mary sings. She sings about God's grace shown in the least of these, as Jesus would later say. Mary sings of a mighty one who does great things for small ones. She sings of mercy for those who trust. She sings of the lowly lifted up. She sings of the hungry filled and the servants helped. Song has the ability now to be an act of resistance. And she sings of power brought down, the proud confounded, the rich sent away empty. Mary's song is a celebration of justice and mercy and humility and the compassion of God. And Mary sings for herself too. She's grateful for her own blessedness. She is grateful, and she seems very real and very human. She partakes of the quality of many women in the Bible, women who didn't wait for the world to change to suit them, but who reached out and changed it. And I'm thinking of Miriam and Rahab, about Ruth and Hannah, about Esther and Deborah, of Pharaoh's daughter, about Mary of Magdala and the Syrophoenician woman. Mary sings for herself here, and she is singing because she is grateful for her own blessedness, but Mary does not sing for herself alone. Mary sings on behalf of the poor and the lowly, in a story of power turned upside down. Mary sings as the matron saint of the poor. Mary sings for political prisoners and all those who are crushed by the tyranny of the unjust. She sings for mothers who have no food to give their children, for the children who have no schools to go to, for mothers who have no jobs, and for all those who have no opportunity to reach up and provide adequately for their families. Mary sings for all of those who hunger and thirst. She sings for the victims of gun violence. She sings for the person immobilized by self-interests, the individual crippled by vanity, the youth captive to addiction. It is to these no less than to the young girl from an inconsequential burg called Nazareth that Jesus should be born, and it is for all of us insofar as we are captors or captives, whether we are oppressed or oppressors, victims or victimizer, that Mary sings, and she sings of justice and freedom. She sings of liberation. And there is a lovely word, to liberate, to be liberated. It's a mission of the realm of God. It's really the meaning of Christmas. to experience liberty and to work that others may also know it is the high calling of those who follow in the way of this great liberator, of the preacher, the teacher, the healer, and paradigm maker. It is the theme of a whole movement of Christian thought and life. A contemporary hymnodist, I love that word, hymnodist, writer of hymns, Gracia Grindle, starts out one of her Advent hymns with a line that captures the sentiment well. We light the Advent candles against the winter light, she penned, not because of, not during, but against, reminding us that the light of Advent, like the light of Christ, is a veritable protest to and resistance to the darkness that gathers all around us. And surely the Song of Mary is the anthem of a liberation movement. The words she sings and the song that she sings is the longest speech placed on the lips of any woman in the New Testament. It is a song of freedom and liberation. A preaching professor, David Lowes, says, singing is an act of resistance. That's not all singing is, of course, he says. Sometimes it's an act of joy, sometimes camaraderie, but it is also an act of resistance. Slaves knew this when they sang the spirituals. They were both praising God and protesting the masters who locked them out of worship, but couldn't keep them out of the promise and the deliverance of the Bible. And civil rights leaders knew this too, singing songs like "We Shall Overcome," when so many in the society didn't give them a chance to advance their cause of justice, let alone triumph. The protesters in Leipzig in 1989 knew this as well, says Lowes. While that element sometimes gets overlooked in the historic sites of talking rather about the Velvet Revolution, it's striking to note that for several months preceding the fall of the Berlin Wall, he writes, the citizens of Leipzig gathered on Monday evenings by candlelight around St. Nikolai Church, the church where Bach composed so many of his cantatas. And they arrived there in order to sing, and over 2 months, their numbers grew from a little more than 1,000 people to more than 300,000 people, over half the citizens of the city singing songs of hope and protest and justice, until their song shook the powers of their nation and it changed the world. And later on, when someone asked one of the officers of the Stasi, the East German secret police, why they did not crush this protest like they had so many others, the officer replied, "We had no contingency plan for singing." Mary sings on behalf of herself as well as many others, but she also sings about you. She sings about you. Do you want your life to contribute to the wellness of our world? Is your Advent this year about the ways in which you want to be making a difference? Your Advent now, it's not Mary's we're talking about. Do you believe that there will be fulfillment, especially now in these times? Do you really believe it will happen? And I don't mean about having it happen someday. I mean, do you believe it? Do you believe that righteousness and justice and love and peace can be the way of love and life right here, right now, on this earth, and that your life counts in the equation for making it so? I believe you do. And that is all Mary did. She still just believed. She figured out that if she was going to err, she would err on the side of risking grace. She would err on the side of believing and then acting on her words. We have careers to think about, many of us. We have families to raise, we have taxes to pay, we have soccer games to shuttle children to, and we have groceries to be bought, and we have houses to maintain. But the question remains, do you believe in the fulfillment of a peaceable realm of God? Because if you do, You can save yourself a lot of stress by looking at that seemingly endless list through your lens of belief and ask how many of the minutes that you have in your life are about being blessed or about being a blessing to someone else. And how many of them are about something else entirely. And you might start with this question: does my life look like what I hope the fulfillment of God's realm on earth will look like? And if not, what might it look like? Why don't you live that life? Why don't I live that life? And then it will be said of you, blessed are you who believe that there will be a fulfillment of what was spoken to you by your faith tradition. If we want to understand a little more about what liberation and justice are all about, it can be helpful to think of the world as a village. I went and found this illustration a few years ago, and it was interesting to see how many of the numbers have changed a little bit. Do you know this one, the world village of 100 people? Good. Imagine the entire world was a single village with a population of 100. Imagine that in this village, the proportion of the world's demographics were maintained. These numbers may not be exact, but they give a good picture of the situation in our village. In a world village reduced to 100 people, 50 would be males, 50 would be female. 61 would be from Asia. 15 would be Africans, 11 would be Europeans, 13 would come from North and South America. In the world village of 100 people, 2 would be infants, 32 would be under the age of 25, 8 would be 65 and over, 1 would be close to death, and 1 would be ready to give birth. In a world village of 100 people, 80 would live in substandard housing. Of the 67 adults in the village, half would be unable to read or write. 50 villagers would suffer from malnutrition. 33 would not have access to clean drinking water. 24 people would not have electricity. Of the 76 that do have electricity, most would use it only for light after dark. In the world village of 107 people would own an automobile, some more than one. 33% of the entire village's wealth would be possessed by 5 people. The poorest 33 people in the village would receive only 3% of the income of the whole village. One way to hear Mary's song is as a song of thanks and praise, that Mary believes that within her is a way at last to fix the situation in the village, to fix hearts that let the situation become so distorted, and so to fix the village's institutions which create and maintain injustice. This is very good news for the village. It's very good news for all, even for those who are the most privileged, because they are made whole from the common health and wholeness of the village. And now, here we are at the end, and this is the most important part. How will we bring forth what is already within us to heal that village? The answer must be in and through the residents of the village itself, through the actions of the small and the powerless, people like Mary. We will be empowered to persuade and to encourage and to help and empower the villagers to fix the village themselves. God appears in the village by the Spirit moving in the hearts of the people who are there to heal that global village. And so then and now, and only now, can we hear the words of the prophet Micah asking us to walk humbly with our God. We can hear the words as the heart of the gospel. These words are for the cry of God for the healing of the human race and our planet. And if we hear those words, if we let the spirit of the words enter our hearts, then we will become ourselves the healers of this earth, sharing in mission and doing this for the sake of all, for the common good. And in this reminder that Christmas is almost here, that little pink candle, different from all the rest, serves as a symbol that light is soon to break against the darkness, even if it is not quite yet. So celebrate with Mary that gift of joy, and hear and rejoice with Mary, and break forth in song, because wholeness is here for the village if we make it so. Healing to the earth and joy to this world. Amen. Amen. Let's rise and sing our closing Alleluia.